BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? I hope everyone had a good weekend. So, just a couple of quick announcements and reminders before we truly begin. The first one is that there is now a playlist that has been made for Down the Dark Lane. That is an audiobook that I've been recording on the weekends. Down the Dark Lane is my second book. It's called 3 Thrillers from the Motel, and it will contain a sequel story to Killer on a White Horse. That was my first novel, so please feel free to check out that on the weekends. But the more important announcement is Black Box Online Radio is going to be returning to its more conventional lineup. In the past, I used to do Zodiac Monday. Wednesday was the AMA, the Ask Me Anything, where I would respond to your questions and comments, always taking requests. And Friday would be the Anything Goes, where any subject is fair game. In some previous Zodiac Monday episodes, I was telling you guys that I wasn't going to be able to keep up with the exact format of this show, the way that I had been recording more frequently, releasing 2 interviews every week about different true crime cases and doing a Zodiac interview on Friday. And I was thinking about doing just a solid individual podcast on BuyMeACoffee.com, and I decided to release one of those on BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNerd88. And you can find it there. I released the first one this weekend. It's called the Zodiac and True Crime Talk. But in all seriousness, I just miss the old lineup. I think it had a lot more structure, and I miss doing the Wednesday AMAs. So that one will come out this Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you want to listen to it in the future, you can listen to it at any time. But at 8 a.m., it's going to be a live stream. The live stream episode is now going to be on Wednesdays, and you can tune in for that and ask me anything, bring any question you want, anything under the sun or in the darkness. And Friday will be the Anything Goes episode, and any subject will be fair game for that one as well. But today is Zodiac Monday, so I would like to respond to some pieces of Zodiac news. One of them is that there is a new interview in the Zodiac Killer Interview with the Expert series that is available on the Zodiac Killer channel. I was normally the host of that program, but we decided to do a bonus episode where a previous guest of the show would interview the normal host. I was interviewed by Richard Grinnell of ZodiacCiphers.com, and Richard did a great job. You can tell Richard is a true expert in the Zodiac case, and I am not. It was just a pure bonus episode, turning the tables. Now somebody's going to interview the normal host, but you can hear the full thing. It's about 2.5 hours on the Zodiac Killer channel. You can also hit the like button and subscribe over there, hit the like button and subscribe over here. And this is the second time that Richard and I have recorded that episode. We recorded it about 1.5 years ago, but there were some issues with the sound file, so it was re-recorded. And there are a couple questions that I might remember that got either altered or edited out, or maybe Richard decided to ask me some different types of questions. And one of them was, who is a Zodiac Killer researcher that you respect the most? And it's a very challenging question. It's easy to talk about the people who are frauds, like Gary Stewart, author of The Most Dangerous Animal of All, whom I've talked about multiple times as being a blatant fraud. But out of all the people I've interacted with, I mean, of course, Richard's name is up there, but I do think there's a certain amount of respect that I would give to Mike Morford of ZodiacKiller.net, and Mike Morford's Zodiac suspect is William McDuff Andrew, even though I disagree with a lot of Morph's observations, and I've talked about that in a lot of previous episodes. I think Morph is not only fair and honest, but I also think that he's very balanced in his thinking compared to some people, which I'll be discussing in this episode. And I think Richard also asked me a question, and again, this is total paraphrasing, but what do you think about these types of far-out theories that are coming from former members of law enforcement? Say, for example, John Cameron accusing Ed Edwards of committing 660 murders. John Cameron is a former member of law enforcement. Or Steve Hodel even saying that his father was the Black Dahlia Avenger, the Zodiac Killer, and committed 23 other murders. Steve Hodel is also a former member of law enforcement. And my honest answer is, I just think that that is human nature, pattern-seeking behavior, and I think it's going to happen to all types of people, no matter what profession they've had. But I am very surprised that these types of theories are put forward from members of law enforcement, even if I can comprehend the rationale behind it. I used to be a big listener to the Opperman Report, hosted by Ed Opperman, and he would interview people about all types of subjects. I actually found his show because of things that were not related to the Zodiac Killer, but in 2018 and 2019, when I began following the Zodiac a little bit more closely, I noticed that Ed Opperman had done lots of Zodiac interviews. Yet when he would interview people, he would ask about the theorists and their connected suspects whom I've just mentioned, like saying, what do you think about Ed Edwards as a Zodiac suspect? What do you think about George Hodel as a Zodiac suspect? And I had that type of reaction. I was like, why is he asking these questions about these far out wacky suspects who are almost certainly not the Zodiac Killer? And as somebody who has been the host of the Zodiac Interview with the Experts series, yeah, I brought that stuff up a lot. As someone who hosts BlackBoxOnlineRadio, I do ask those types of questions. When I interviewed Mike Morford about the Golden State Killer, of course I asked him, what do you think of the Zodiac Killer, Golden State Killer connection? The idea that these two people are one and the same? And now I understand it. The reason why is because these ideas are very popular, and they get discussed very frequently. They come up in threads and messages a lot, not to mention in other parts of YouTube, well outside of just the hardcore Zodiac sleuths. So in short, there are lots of discussions about them, so you might as well just ask somebody what they think and they can give their own feedback. Now, outside of my immediate window into the Zodiac world, there is somewhat of a feud that is going on between Adam Ivester and two individuals, and I guess I can share their names, Craig Rhodes and Holly Tosky, and they are more or less trying to debunk everything that Adam Ivester has put forward about his Zodiac killer suspect, John Parr Cox. The Zodiac Killer was a serial killer that began operating in or around 1968. I say in or around because we don't truly know the first date of Zodiac activity. But Adam Ivester has proposed John Parr Cox as a Zodiac suspect. John Parr Cox is one of the older suspects. He was 50 years old at the time of the murders, at the time of all of the Zodiac murders. And this is another thing that I have misstated, and I've even seen this misstated by some people like Craig who are posting this on Facebook, that John Parr Cox was 51 at the time of the crimes, because, 1968, 1969, somebody should have a birthday, right? Well, not John Parr Cox, because his birthday was in November, and the first Zodiac crime is on December 20th of 1968, and the final crime is on October 11th of 1969, the confirmed crimes, as we call them. And John Parr Cox was born in November, so he was 50 for the entirety of Zodiac activity, and he is still one of the older suspects, much like Shel Cavalli, the suspect of Mike Rodelli. But one of the big pieces of pieces of evidence or points of contention is that Adam Ivester has made a critical error in his research. Adam has appeared on this channel as well as running his own YouTube channel, talking about all of his finds and research in regards to John Parr Cox. And one of them is that John Parr Cox was a member of a group that used a private hunting island called Brooks Island, and his hunting buddies were actually Bing Crosby, the entertainer, and Trader Vic. And they lost the private hunting preserve on December 20th of 1968, the date of the first confirmed crime, the Lake Herman Road murders, the deaths of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. Now, this is almost as if somebody created this type of mental blueprint immediately, or they had this thought come to mind that I've lost my private hunting island. All right, well, now I'm going to start hunting people for sport. And that's not an arbitrary decision, because it's an influence, or it's taken from the most dangerous animal of all, the most dangerous game, excuse me, because the Zodiac would talk about this in the 408 cipher, saying, I like killing people because it's so much fun. It's more fun than hunting wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all, the solution to the Zodiac Killer's first cryptogram. And the Zodiac made a direct reference to this, so it's pretty clear that the Zodiac says that he's hunting people for sport. This guy, who is actually somewhat of an affluent businessman, I think we can call him that, or at the very least, he is a prominent member of the California elites. He loses the private hunting island, so he hatches the plan to hunt people for sport. Now, Craig and Holly are challenging Adam by saying that that is just simply not true. He did not lose the private hunting island on December 20th of 1968. They actually renewed the lease for 2 more years, thereabouts. I mean, estimations. When I say that, it's because ending, instead of December of 1968, they actually kept Brooks Island until 1970. So they're just asking the question, how on earth would that work? They've gone back and they've found the documentation, and they shared all of this in a Facebook group called the Zodiac Killer Library. And Adam's defense is more or less that, well, he still could have thought that he would have lost the island on December 20th of 1968 because of a newspaper article, which Adam has posted in the same group and sent to me, that states that on September 17th of 1968 that the island is only going to be in their possession for 3 more months. So, I mean, there was this expectation that he was going to lose the island, and I'm just putting 2 and 2 together that some way, somehow, maybe someone appealed the process and they stopped the forced sale of Brooks Island and they postponed it until 1970. But believe it or not, I'm on Adam's side with that one. I don't think that that completely negates or refutes his theory, because it's all about how somebody still could have conceived that plan in their mind that they thought they were going to lose their private hunting island, therefore they're now going to turn the tables and start hunting people for sport. That doesn't mean I endorse Adam's theory involving John Cox in the Zodiac Killer mystery, but I mean, just giving where credit is due. Another challenge that they have made is that Adam has strongly misinterpreted the handwriting samples of John Cox. John Cox is somebody who has one of the closest resemblances to the Zodiac Killer's handwriting. I'm not a handwriting expert, I admit it, but when I look at his handwriting, it is visibly similar, and they look at a very specific example about how John Cox once wrote out the word Visda, V-I-S-D-A, and his letter D is actually somewhat similar to the Zodiac Killer's letter D in one of the letters, but it turns out that Adam misread the word, and it's actually Viscla, V-I-S-C-L-A, so that would mean that this is, again, a misunderstanding, and I will acknowledge that, and I would agree with Craig and Holly on that one, that then that means that the letter shape of this particular sample does not resemble the Zodiac's letter D, because it's actually a C and an L put together. But if you'd like to hear more about John Cox as a Zodiac Killer suspect, you can look at my interviews that I've done with Adam Ivester. He's been a guest on the channel 3 times, and you can also find a lot of his material on Facebook in some of the groups. Now, switching gears a little bit, I've talked to you guys in the past about how I found this program called Hit the Road, Jack. It's run by Nanette Bartow, and it talks about her Zodiac suspect, Jack Torrance. And they have a lot of claims, and they also bring on panelists. As I said, Nanette Bartow is the host of it, but she regularly talks to Harriet Suchet, an individual named Nolan Del Campo, and sometimes other people come on, and it's a group discussion. And even though I don't agree with Jack Torrance as a Zodiac suspect, I wanted to explore one of their claims, and then I'll share a big piece of news, or a big thing to respond to. But the first is, they talked about the Zodiac Killer's Lake Berryessa stabbing. On September 27th of 1969, the Zodiac Killer attacked Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard at Lake Herman Road. He was wearing a black hooded costume. And the Zodiac would also go on to make references to comic books in some of his future communications. Most famously, the Halloween card, where there's a direct reference to the Tim Hole comics as well as to Red Rider, both contained in the same Halloween card. But what they were proposing was, is it possible that the Zodiac Killer's Lake Berryessa costume was inspired by a character called the Black Hood? The Black Hood began in the 1940s, and it was produced by the predecessor of Archie Comics, which then went on to be Archie Comics, and then it was taken over in 2015 by a place called Dark Circle, or was it Dark House? Anyway, that's not the important part. There are different evolutionary steps to this comic book character, the Black Hood, the same way that many comic book characters that started in the 1940s or even the 30s, for example, have also had a lot of different story changes. And the Black Hood also had its own radio show, and one of the episodes is available on YouTube. And I decided to listen to the Black Hood radio show, episode 1, just to see if there were any types of clues that would show that there could have been an influence on the Zodiac killer. And when I was listening to this, I really didn't see or hear a lot. I mean, this is an old-fashioned radio show. They're doing fight sequences, and you actually just hear the noises. Pow! Blam! Like they're just making the sounds of people getting into a fist fight. But the Black Hood from the 1940s is a crime fighter. He is someone who's trying to help people, and everything that he's doing is in the name of goodness, which just appears to be in complete contradiction to the Zodiac killer of the 1960s. Now, the images that were shared on Nanette's show, Hit the Road, Jack, are from the Black Hood in 2015. There was, again, it's an evolutionary process of the story, or it's a new series that was made for the Black Hood that talks about how it's not even the first person. Somebody accidentally kills the first Black Hood, and his name is Gregory Hettinger, and then he gets scarred in some type of accident or some type of confrontation. And as a police officer, he develops substance abuse problems, addiction, and there's a trailer that's done online for the Black Hood comic series, and when he even says, is he a cop or is he a junkie? And somebody gives him the Black Hood as a joke, another officer, and then he starts wearing it himself, and it's all about how he is adopting this type of vigilante persona as the Black Hood. Now, something like that, I could comprehend about how that could be an influence on the Zodiac killer, except this is definitely impossible because it's in 2015, and you'd have to be making the assumption that the Zodiac was a member of law enforcement or some type of security personnel, and that he was trying to take matters into his own hands. But even in that scenario, the Zodiac isn't targeting criminals to the best of our knowledge. I mean, the closest you could get with that is Darlene Ferrin and Mike Michaud were at Blue Rock Springs Park, and they went there to buy drugs, but that's about it. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the first victims at Lake Herman Road, were definitely not even breaking the law, maybe just sitting in a car together. As to the best of our knowledge, they weren't breaking the law. Darlene and Farron and Mike Michaud, as I said, maybe they went to buy drugs. Brian and Cecilia were just on a picnic blanket at 6:30 p.m. in a public park, more or less, at Lake Berryessa. That's the third crime. And Paul Stein was a taxi driver who was murdered while he was working. He definitely wasn't breaking the law either. So any type of crime fighter, vigilante thing, I think that that's very, very unlikely at being any type of Zodiac influence. I'm extremely curious, though, about this Black Hood comic series from 2015. I have to confess to you, the 1940s radio show wasn't very entertaining for me, but that's just my take on the subject. I had never even heard of the Black Hood before, but apparently it's been worked into a lot of other things in the Archie Comics world. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of it, but when I was, again, watching that trailer for the 2015 version, it was dark. And it was extremely dark, and that's good. I was talking to a friend once who was trying to write a novel, and he said that I've had this idea for a novel for quite some time, and I've been trying to write it out, and I've got a little bit written down, but it's too dark. And I was like, what do you mean by too dark? Do you mean like too dark as in morbid, or too dark as in emo? And he said, too dark as in morbid. And then I said to him, and this is true, I said, there is no such thing. I mean, there really isn't, Might as well explore this dark, morbid curiosity to the nth degree in the world of fiction. Fiction can do something like that. I find it amazingly entertaining. So, I'm going to be perhaps reading some of these in the future, but I won't have a lot to talk about on Black Box Online Radio because I think the entire Black Hood character most likely was not an influence on the Lake Berryessa stabbing, unless I encounter something from the earlier comics that could have been. But as I said, that came from Nanette Bartow and her show Hit the Road, Jack. And I've been wanting to talk to you guys about that for a little while, but I do have some more unfortunate news about show Hit the Road Jack. It's a weekly program about the Zodiac Killer, as is Zodiac Monday, and I just became a regular listener. I became a weekly listener, and I saw that they put out a new episode, so I decided to click on it, episode number 108, and I was just listening along, and then all of a sudden, they began talking about me. And I had just watched my interview with the experts episode on the Zodiac Killer channel. I was like, this came out actually pretty nice. I like the finished product. Big thank you to Steve Beaumont, the producer over there, and Richard Grinnell, who participated in that. But then they started just discussing me as a person. And I'll play the interview clip once again from Hit the Road Jack on the channel Finding the Zodiac. These are the words of Nanette Bartow, and she's going to be reading off some comments that somebody else sent to her, someone anonymous, and then I will have a quick response.
So she's warning me now that this Ned guy on his podcast is doing his best to tear down anybody who is providing good information. He gets them on their show. He almost gives them a heart attack or a stroke with all his bullying. And then the person ultimately leaves his show and tears down everything they have on the Zodiac because they're so sickened by the way they were treated by this guy. So she gives me this heads up, but then I start receiving these messages from her where she says that this man is a very, very good hacker. He's out of the Philippines. He has actually hacked into her laptops, into her emails. He has embedded a folder in her laptop where he is just taking information, and he was actually producing emails that she had with me that she didn't herself produce on the internet. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. And what I didn't pay attention to is just a couple days before this happened, I received a request from Ned Dehan to be a guest on my show. Now, I don't have a problem with him coming on. What's that?
No, I wouldn't want any contact with him.
Well, and that's what I was going to talk with Juan about, because clearly if I let this man into my system in any way, shape, or form, then he can, I think, hack in, manipulate, and start controlling the information that I have, where it's going and where it ends up, if this is the truth. I don't know it to be the truth. I reached out and called him yesterday on a couple of his phone numbers, but I didn't get it. I didn't get any answer, so I kind of left that one in the box. But yeah, at this point, if they are doing nothing but bashing good work, I don't need any part of that.
Now, I was very surprised to see and hear this, because the fact that somebody is just going to read off unproven allegations and then is just going to sit back and laugh with her friends about it, I was not only surprised, but I was also disappointed. And to you guys who listen to Black Box Online Radio, you already know that these things are not true. I want to be extremely clear about something. I am not a computer hacker. I don't know anything about computer hacking. I'm not a tech-savvy person. I edit this program, Zodiac Monday, on Video Guru. That's the software that I use. It took me 9 months to learn how to put images on this program. I'm just not good with technology. Do you think if I were good with technology and I'm some type of sophisticated computer hacker that I would have just put a black box on my episodes with audio behind it for 3.5 years? I mean, I know absolutely nothing about computer hacking, but you're going to have to take my word for it. But there's also the allegation of bullying, and you might have heard that line about how somebody deleted their channel after they were bullied by me following a debate. And the person she's talking about is Ray Grant. Ray Grant did run a YouTube channel that has been deleted. All of you regular listeners know exactly what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to go through the whole story. And Ray Grant did participate in an episode of the Zodiac Killer debate files on Planet X Filmworks, but I did not. I wasn't even on that program. And the Zodiac Killer debate files is hosted by Ross Geraci of Planet X Filmworks. Richard Grinnell was the other participant in that one. And I watched the entire episode, and nobody was bullied. I mean, absolutely no bullying. This whole thing that someone almost had a stroke because of the way they were treated, firstly by me. Again, I wasn't even on the show, and then I can tell that Nanette Bartow received this message from someone who's very paranoid, but the fact that she is not even going to watch the episode or even do a single YouTube search and just find it and look at 3 minutes of the content and recognize that that had nothing to do with me at all. I mean, that is just, well, that's pathetic to a certain extent, and nobody wants to be called a bully. I'm actually very anti-bullying. I think you guys can tell from my personality if you've listened this far into the episode. But being accused of hacking into other people's computers and manipulating their messages, that's criminal behavior. And I contacted Nanette Bartow and openly said that all of these things are untrue. That's just libel and slander. And I simply got a response back from her saying, I want to be clear, I have never accused you of anything. I was reading off a message that someone else had written me that accused you of these things, but I'm not accusing you personally. And I'm just thinking, well, then why did you read it off at all? Why didn't you put an ounce of effort into trying to verify any of these claims? And giving a shout out to YouTube user Dirt Poor Richard, who has followed this program, and I've done an episode on Dirt Poor Richard's observations about the Zodiac killer mystery, and I've mentioned him on some of the previous Zodiac Monday episodes. He openly wrote out in the comments section, just saying all of these allegations that this person is making, which Nanette Bartow chose to share, even though she's saying they aren't her words. She chose to share them. He's like, even all these things that you're saying about Ned are not true, and he provided some reasons, and I openly ask other people, please don't go over to her channel on my behalf and say anything else. I've contacted her, and Dirt Poor Richard already made a public statement. I think that's sufficient. But I have also talked about something in the past, and that is that Black Box Online Radio is a social commentary channel. This is a channel where I respond to different pieces of information, books and podcasts and YouTube videos, and also I read off emails from people who have contacted me. Anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. And what I had to learn the hard way was, with commentary, you have a responsibility to be accurate. And if you share inaccurate information, that's irresponsible. So this whole defense of, oh, well, these aren't my ideas. This is just an email that someone else has written out. And my simple challenge to that is, it's still irresponsible of you to just read off this stuff, accusing somebody of criminal behavior for crimes that not only they were never charged with, things that I absolutely have not done, and the fact that you're accusing me of bullying somebody on a show that I wasn't even on just goes to demonstrate that you aren't putting an ounce of effort into trying to verify these claims. And I just think that that's all irresponsible. And I had wanted to talk to you guys about the Black Hood for a couple weeks. I actually listened to the radio program about 2 weeks ago. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else to say about Nanette Bartow's material. Her Zodiac suspect is Jack Torrance, and I disagree with all of those findings. And I don't really see any reason to keep watching her show or to follow her content, and that goes for the other participants who are on there. But as far as Black Box Online Radio goes, for the year of 2024, I am trying to bring a lot more guests on the program. I'm trying to have more guests on the show, so it's not only me talking. You will also hear people giving their side of the story about the Zodiac killer mystery. And my guest on the program today will be Joseph Shores. He's been on Black Box Online Radio before. In the episode, Richard Gaikowski was not the Zodiac killer. First, I would like to get to your shoutouts on BuyMeACoffee.com. BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNed88 allows you to make a donation or a contribution to help support the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday. And our first shout-out goes to River Prawn Pottery. And thank you so much for your regular and consistent support. And the next one is from Batman66. Batman bought you a coffee. I never get tired of saying that. Batman66, you are amazing. Thank you also for sharing so many pieces of information about true crime for the program. And our next one comes to us from James Glenn King, who says, I believe it was Ross Sullivan who killed Sherry Jo Bates. I grew up in Arlington, California. later incorporated into Riverside, California, and studied at the Riverside City College with former Riverside Chief of Police Vic Jones. Anyway, thanks for the journalism, James Glenn King. Hey, James, thank you so much for your support. And the next one comes to us from Classic Chevy Cat, who says, Hey, Ned, just wanted you to know you are appreciated, Classic Chevy Cat. And I should also thank Classic Chevy Cat for her regular and consistent support. We have another shout out on YouTube using the super thanks. This one is from Midnight Ventures. It says, Morning, Ned. Here's a coffee, always listening. Midnight Ventures, who is a longtime BBOR follower, so that is greatly appreciated. And the last one is from Jamie Hill, also a super thanks on YouTube. And Jamie just says, thanks, but you're welcome, Jamie. I am grateful for all of you guys. And these methods of supporting the show really help the channel because it is just going to allow Black Box Online Radio to expand so I can have more guests on the program. More people will be coming on the show, as well as doing more types of technological things. Even though I'm not a computer hacker, I'm going to try my best to have more pieces of equipment working, and it is an ongoing process. I understand nothing about technology, so I have to learn all of this stuff the hard way. But I do appreciate each and every one of you. One more time, you can hit the like button and subscribe, and listen to the bonus podcast that is out on BuyMeACoffee.com, BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNed88. The bonus podcast is called
BBOR Black
The
Box
Zodiac and True Crime
Online Radio.
Talk. But for
Coming to
now,
you from
here's
West
the
Virginia
interview
at
with
heart and
Joseph
from
Shores.
around the globe. My guest on the program today is Joseph Shores. He is a Zodiac killer researcher who has a lot of info to share with us, and this is almost like a follow-up from a previous Zodiac killer interview that I did with Eddie McNamara. Going to be talking all about alternative suspects in the Lake Herman Road murders, which was the first crime committed by the Zodiac killer, and the possibility of some Zodiac letters being hoaxes or not actually from the Zodiac killer himself. Joseph, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Ned?
I'm doing just fine. Now, as I just said, I recently had Eddie McNamara on the program, and he cited you as a very strong source for the creation of his Zodiac killer theory and observations. Would you like to give us an introduction as to how you became fascinated with the Zodiac killer case, and what is the stance that you have now on some of these topics?
Okay. I thought you'd ask that. All right, so I was always interested in the Zodiac case. It's the first, like as a kid, I watched the History Channel, and they had pro Graysmith theory, like Zodiac documentaries on. I don't even think it's popular now. Like, I think I've watched some of them. So I was always kind of interested in it. And I posted on Reddit a lot. And when Horrid's theory came around, became popular, I got interested in that. So I was looking into it. And I was never, bought, the whole theory. I was never like, wow, it's House Nook. You did it, Horrid. You solved the case. But I always thought, Lake Herman Road could be unrelated. Brulac Spring could be unrelated. Maybe the Lake Berryessa could be unrelated, but I always thought that was pretty far-fetched. And maybe Stein could be unrelated. So I always thought there was something to his theory, even though I didn't believe everything he was saying. So fast forward, I kind of, his theory came out 8 years ago, a long time ago, right? And so I haven't always been following it. So I got into Jack the Ripper for a while, and there's this guy Rob House, and his suspects, Aaron Kaminsky, right?
Yes, Aaron Kosminski.
Yeah, sorry. And the theory, and basically the reason why Aaron Kosminski is the Zodiac, the best reason is because Sir Robert Anderson, who's I don't know if he was the assistant head or he was the head of Scotland Yard. He was up there, right? Robert Anderson in Scotland Yard. He says that Aaron Kosminski was the Jack the Ripper, right? That's pretty much, if you wanted to boil down the theory why Aaron Kosminski is Jack the Ripper, that's pretty much it, right?
Well, there are countless reasons why people think that Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper. I mean, we could do 3 hours on him alone as a suspect, and I'm sure both you and I find some disagreements with that particular theory. But I would like to hear more about how this ties to the Zodiac.
So so basically, I listened to like all the Jack the Ripper things, and that was the most like I listened to, you know, do you ever listen to the Ripper cast with Jonathan Mendez or whatever his name is?
Actually, no, I haven't heard that
Oh,
one.
so it's a really good Jack the Ripper podcast. Like they'll have on like Rob House, and they'll have like 4 or 5 like experts at Jack the Ripper on, and like they'll talk about why Erica Kosminski is Jack the Ripper. So it's, you know, it's really good because it's like everyone's an expert, so it's really good to hear them like kind of dissect it. And I always thought Eric Kosminski had like that was the best case. Like if you know, so I took that like the reasoning behind like Eric Kosminski's Jack the Ripper case, and I was applying it to like Horan's theory. And I thought that if you do that, all right, like Cunningham was there, right? He was oh my god, who was Cunningham in Vallejo? I think he was a sergeant in Vallejo. He was working the Zodiac cases. If you read the Lake Herman Road police reports, a lot of them are sent to Cunningham, like from the various cops. He was high up in the Vallejo police reports. He knew what was going on in the investigation. It was his opinion that it was done by other people other than the Zodiac killer. So I kind of took what Rob House's argument, and I applied it to Horan's theory. Was like the basic thing I did with a lot of my thoughts on the case.
And for the audience, who is this Cunningham that you mentioned?
Right. So he was a cop. Wow, this is not good. In Vallejo, I think he was a sergeant. He had the same rank as Ludbad. Well, Ludbad was a detective and a sergeant, and he might be a lieutenant. I don't know cop ranks that. They might be like lieutenants. They had the same rank, but Ludbad was the lead detective on the Zodiac case in 1969 or whatever. But Cunningham, he was more like a supervisor of the other cops. Like if you look at there's pictures of Pierre Berdue like at a drug bust, and it's his partner, and then Cunningham's there because Cunningham was like a supervisor cop. But yeah, so he was a cop for Vallejo is like the short answer.
Okay, and what exactly is this theory that Cunningham has about the Lake Herman Road murders? If the Zodiac killer didn't commit that crime, who did?
Right. Well, the one thing you have to know is a lot of the stuff about Cunningham we're getting from one source, which is the Crimes of the Century notes. So the Crimes of the Century was a documentary in the late 80s. And the producer of the documentary, he interviewed a bunch of people as like pre-interviews to see if they had anything cool to say, interesting to say. So one of the people he interviewed was Cunningham, and we have the notes from the interview. So that's where we get a lot of the stuff from. So he thought it was like we just have the notes. So he says the redheaded kid did it, but it was there was this gas station robbery on June 3rd, 1969, where, David McGrath, Robert Donahue, Matthew Donahue, and Michael Swerdfinger, they were all convicted, so I assume they did it, so I don't think I have to say they're accused. They went to this gas station, they kidnapped this guy, they drove him like 3 miles away. Michael Schwarzenegger is convicted of shooting him. They went to another gas station a couple towns away, and they robbed that, and then they shot the guy there, and that guy survived. And they were 3 of them were picked up the next day. Schwarzenegger was picked up the day after that. And according to Cunningham, one of them, which I assume is David McGrath, confessed to him that he did the Lake Herman Road crime with someone else.
Okay, though, so this brings up a challenge that was posed by Tom Boyd of ZodiacKiller.com on my most recent interviews with Eddie McNamara, and he is simply pointing out, I'll ask it as a question to you. Was the information about the Lake Herman Road murders already published in the newspapers when this confession happened?
Not to my knowledge. There's a poster called Craggle, who's like a really good Zodiac researcher, and he says that some of the things were in the newspaper, but like I've looked at newspapers at Tom Voigt's site, and I haven't seen like the clothing that Betty Lou Junction was wearing. So Betty Lou Junction was wearing a red dress, and I haven't seen that in the newspaper as far. Wait, no, she was wearing a purple dress. Excuse me. But I haven't seen that in the newspaper as far as Betty Lou Johnson's purple dress. Maybe I missed it, but as far as I've seen, I haven't seen the clothes that they were wearing in the newspaper. But some people do. It is a point of question. Like
And when exactly does this confession take place? Like, what was the exact day when someone
that was
murders?
Eddie kind of had like exact date of the confession. We don't. The answer is we don't know. They were arrested June 3rd, June 4th. Their trial was like November of 1969. Their sentencing was like December 1969, and they were on death row by like late January, February 70 at the latest. So it had to be fall. Like I would guess that it was sometime towards the end of the trial, maybe even after the trial, towards the sentencing. So I would guess that it was like November 1969, December 1969. So after after the Stein murder, I would guess that was when their confession was for the late Herman Home crime the previous year, but I don't know.
But Joseph, that would mean that Tom Voigt is correct. I mean, that's what he's stated. I phrased it to you as a question, but that would mean that the confession came well after the Zodiac killer had already talked about the Lake Herman Road murders in his letter, and the Lake Herman Road story would have been.
But the Zodiac murder doesn't mention the purple dress either in his letters.
Do you mean like when firstly, which is the suspect that made the confession?
I'm like 99% sure it's David McGrath.
Okay, and is that something else that he said? I'll state some facts that only I and the police know as well, and the girl was wearing a purple dress. Is that what he said?
He said, no, we don't know what he said, but Cunningham told the producer that he said that he knew the clothes that he was wearing and where they were shot, everything. Like he just gives like he's talking to some TV producer, so he just gives like a couple sentences about how Cunningham confirmed it.
But the thing that troubles me is, why wouldn't Les Lundblad get on board with that if they have a very solid suspect in the Lake Herman Road murders? I know that there's this guy named the Zodiac who's taken credit for it, but, I mean, he's a detective, right?
Right.
Follow the facts. So why
Right.
wouldn't he look into this theory more closely?
I mean, let's see if we have anything about that. Not really. So there was an article from 1970 in the Benicia Herald called, new suspects in Lake Herman Road murder. So I assume Cunningham leaked it to the Benicia Herald that they had new suspects in the murder. So like it made the paper. They it was some, and over the years, so there was John Lynch, who he was another cop in Vallejo. He got the citizen card. He was on Geraldo Rivera's show in like 1990, and he said, yeah, they were killed by Faraday he says they knew about drug busts and they were killed by drug dealers. Ed Russ, he was in some chat room, who's another Vallejo cop. He said that he doesn't think Zodiac did Lake Herman Road. It might be some more cops that I missed. But, all right, what was your initial question? I forgot.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is, why wouldn't Les Lundblad...
Why wouldn't Les Lundblad do that?
Yeah, why wouldn't he...
I mean, I'm sure it happens all the time where, like, cops disagree about who the killer of the crime is. Like, I don't think it's that rare that there's a disagreement in the police. I mean, a lot of people have been looking at the Lake Herman Road murders for 55 years. A lot of people think Zodiac did it. He provided proof in his letter that for facts that only him and the police know. And as far as I can tell, 10 shots was in the paper. Faraday's body location, a direction is in the paper. It's not, you have to be like a local to know like which direction. Like you can see the mountains. There's a picture in the paper. You can see the mountains, and you can see Faraday's body is the chalk outline. Betty Lou's Jensen, like I can't tell Betty Lou's Jensen's body direction from the paper articles. So I don't know how Zodiac knew that. And then the ammo is not in the paper. So I don't know how Zodiac knew what kind of ammo was in the Lake Herman, used in the Lake Herman Road murder. So as far as I, could tell with Zodiac, he did seem to know some facts that were not public. But like I don't have a great explanation for that, but there is something for the Zodiac theory.
Well, yes, because as you just stated, the Zodiac says the type of ammo, the location of their bodies, and he also talks about the number of shots that were fired. Now, you brought up someone who's been a guest on this program in the past, Thomas Henry Horan. His explanation is that the person who created the Zodiac killer persona is a man named Hal Snook, whom you've already mentioned. And Hal Snook was a member of law enforcement and a well-respected member of law enforcement. So he had the opportunity to read police reports from different departments and different jurisdictions. And that's how he learned the information that was going into the letters. Then he started writing letters taking credit for crimes that he didn't commit. Why? We're still not even sure. You said many years the hoax theory has been out there and the motive has not clearly been established. So I want to know, where is Thomas Horan right and where is Thomas Horan wrong, according to you?
I think a lot of his individual suspects. He didn't even know for the gas station. I think he knew about David McGrath. I don't know if he knew about him at the time, but he invented this whole thing with David Wally Ott is the Cunningham suspect, and then I don't think he thinks Jim Crabtree killed Darlene. I don't think Jim Crabtree killed Darlene, but that's more. At least Jim Crabtree is a legitimate suspect for Darlene's. Some people think he's a legitimate suspect for the Zodiac murders. I just don't, instinctual wise, I see him on the documentary. I don't think he did it, but maybe I'm wrong. And then for this, it always kind of sat how he accused Dennis Land, even though he actually has some good information about Dennis Land. It always kind of sat I didn't like it. It kind of seemed unfair that, all right, Dennis Land, he messes up, he makes a mistake, he gets rid of the evidence, and now Thomas Henry Horan is accused of a murder over it. I always thought that was a kind of a low blow. And then I don't even know who he accuses of the last murder, some cook or something. So he
hasn't publicly revealed his newest suspect for the start.
Yeah, and then he's always changing his. I over the years, I don't like how he always changes his theory. He's always now he's really. See, I don't even know what books he fits. So after he read Chaos, he completely changed his theory, and he added the CIA to his theory, where. Yes. I liked his original theory, where it was the police did it, and it was some sort of Hal Snook's original motive was to get more money for the police or something. I forget what Hal Snook's were, but it kind of made more sense to me. Now the CIA ordering the Zodiac murders, this makes no sense to me. That motive. Why would the CIA do this?
Well, I am kind of in agreement with you in some regards to there. Just simply looking at the concept of how these murders were committed in 1968 and 69, and they're all different. There's differences among all of the Zodiac crime scenes where it looks like maybe it could have been somebody else. And then the way that this person was able to write letters with information that only the police should have is because he was a member of law enforcement himself, reading the police reports. But then it goes to a different level. You were talking about money for the police department. Do you mean the drug smuggling angle in the hoax theory, where that's the serous oxalate chemical, and that the Zodiac once misspelled the word curious using the spelling of Cirrus, and that was something that could have been used to try to find out, like, if Cambodian heroin was ending up on the streets of San Francisco. I know you're laughing, but I'm going to try and finish. And that it was about getting these messages in the paper, and Hal Snook was communicating with a CIA operative named Anthony Pashepny, or Tony Poe. And then, as you said, now the CIA gets more involved to even greater lengths than that. But is that what you meant by, like, money for the police department?
Yeah, well, somehow in my mind, I kind of forgot about a lot of that. And it was more just like somehow Hal Snook, like, I kind of, like, if his theory was correct, I thought it was like, all right, Hal Snook, he had this idea. I'm not, like, can I intelligently say what Hal Snook's motive was? No. But somehow he wanted more, like, money or attention, and he somehow did the Zodiac letters as a hoax to somehow do something. But even as I say that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, but I could kind of see it. But once we get, like, all right, this, like, so, like, in Chaos, it kind of makes sense that why the CIA would want to, like, discredit the hippie movement. I can kind of see it. I don't know why. Like, I can't even. It doesn't. At no level does it make sense to me. The CIA ordering the Zodiac murders. At no level does it make sense. Does it? Like, I can't even fathom it. I guess there was a book where, like, Manny Grossman was mentioning this. There is a book, right, where they accused the CIA of being behind, like, every murder, but I actually didn't even look it up when he mentioned that. So I guess, so I think Horn got that idea from someone else too. So after I heard that, I'm like, wow, Horn got that idea from someone else too? What is he?
Oh, yeah, well, I have an episode on the Zodiac Killer CIA connection. If anybody wants to check that one out, you can also hit the like button and subscribe to Black Box Online Radio. All right, Joseph, though, if you're not on board with that theory, I want to hear your exact take on the Zodiac crimes. How do you think the Lake Herman Road murders happened? I mean, talking about the killer arriving, what's the chain of events? What dialogue do you think could have been spoken?
Yeah.
And just step by step, can you walk us through the first crime?
All right, so I thought about a lot. I heard it. I was surprised for Eddie you asked him all those questions, because, like, those would be really tough for me too. Like, so could we say, like, what, like, the theory is of the crime? Like, the theory of the crime is, all right, so Betty Lou and David are in their car. They're on the left bank, They have their seats reclined. The Zodiac pulls up next to them where, like, the sketches where James Owen is, like, 8-10 feet away. He gets out of his he goes around to his passage door. He fires a shot from the passage door. He goes up towards David and Faraday's car, pretty close to the car. He fires, like, I don't know, 2 more shots. He convinces them to go out. They both go out the passenger's door of their car. David Faraday is shot, like, immediately in the head upon exiting the door, and then Betty Lou Jensen runs away and is shot. Zodiac even misses a couple times, and she's shot, like, 5 times or something. So that's, like, the police theory about what happened. So that's, like, for me to, like, I don't know, like, I do think that's a good point Horn brings up, is why was the first shot fired from the passenger side door? And, like, why did he just get out of the driver's door and fire from there? So I think that is a good point he has. But, like, why did David Faraday not try to drive away? Can I ask you a challenge question? Like, if someone's shooting at you, wouldn't you try to drive away? Why did he get out of the car? Like, I don't get that.
Someone has a gun pointed at him, and he hears gunshots, and then he just went along with what the killer instructed him to do. Yeah. I mean, well, it's like asking, why didn't Brian Hartnell put up a bigger fight at Lake Berryessa? And Brian Hartnell lived, so he was able to tell us. He's like, I could risk my own life, but Cecilia Shepard told me not to fight back, just to go along with it. I couldn't risk her life by making the situation worse. And I don't know what David Faraday was thinking, of course, because he never lived to tell his story. However, that sounds like a very similar process. And I do think that Brian Hartnell and David Faraday would have been kind of somewhat on the same thought level, because they're both well-educated guys. And David Faraday was a model citizen, more or less, to the best of our knowledge. He seemed like a genuinely good person. He didn't seem like a coward either. But at the same time, someone's got a gun shooting at you and you're 17 years old. Get out of the car now. He went along with it.
Yeah.
But Joseph, I do have something for you. Does this mean that you agree with Thomas Horan's observation about how David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen are parked at Lake Herman Road, and then a car comes up next to them, which would be on the right side? Then the first shooter exited from the passenger side door and then put his gun over the roof of the whatever car that was there and began to fire bullets. Do you think that that is the correct interpretation of the evidence? It sounds like you're leaning toward that being yes, but
yeah,
I want to say it directly.
You could have like Grinnell fact check us. He has a great article about this. The first shot comes from the passenger's door. Like if James Owen is correct about where the car was, the first shot comes from the passenger's door, and everyone believes James Owen. But so what I think is it would be easier. All right, if one person starts shooting at them, if I'm David Faraday, as someone's shooting at me, I'm getting that wheel and I'm getting the hell out of there. But if two people are there and like one person's ordering them and the other person's shooting, I think it would be easier for two people to like convince them to get out of the car. So that's why I think like the crime scene, it leads toward two people being the culprits, because like one person's talking to them and the other person's like firing the guns and they don't know what. David Faraday doesn't know what quite, he's like confused. He doesn't know what quite is going on. So that's why I think the fact that David Faraday gets out of the passenger's side of the car leads towards like, all right, there's more people there that are like hurting him out of the car.
Okay, I mean, that is possible, but I would like to ask, how certain are you that Lake Herman Road was not Zodiac related?
Pretty certain.
Do you want to put a number on it? Like percentage out of 100?
90%.
90%, wow. So then, what exactly is the motive for the Lake Herman Road murders if it wasn't the Zodiac killer?
All right, so John Lynch, on his appearance on Now It Can Be Told, he says that it was because David Faraday found out about a drug bust and the drug dealers decided to kill him. Cunningham, in the producer notes, he says that basically they were like kind of like Clockwork Orange style, I like to say. Like they were just wild kids and they were just looking for excitement and they decided to kill these kids for no reason. It's basically what Cunningham says. So Cunningham's reason makes more sense to me, that these guys were just kind of out of control and just decided to kill them for no reason. That makes more sense to me. But I don't know who's right.
Okay, everybody, that was Joseph Shores on the program. I would like to give a big thank you to him for appearing as a guest. And I would like to remind everyone that you can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box. And there is always BlackBoxNed88 over on Instagram. And I'll see you over there. Goodbye.